The transport shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, and Commander Vex Thor of the Kalreth Empire watched the blue planet grow larger in the viewport. His four arms crossed over his chest in a gesture of confidence. He stood 7 feet tall, his scales gleaming deep purple in the shuttle's interior lights. Behind him, 3 Kalreth diplomats whispered nervously among themselves. "Commander, perhaps we should reconsider," one of them said. "Human military training is known to be unusual." Vex Thor's laugh rumbled through his chest. "I have defeated 247 opponents in ritual combat. I have conquered 6 worlds for the Empire. What can these soft humans possibly teach me that I do not already know?" The shuttle landed at a facility the humans called Paris Island. The moment the door opened, Vex Thor stepped out into humid air that clung to his scales. A human stood waiting on the tarmac. He was shorter than Vex Thor by at least 2 feet, wearing a brown uniform with a distinctive wide-brimmed hat. His face showed no expression whatsoever. "Commander Vex Thor," the human said. His voice was flat, neither friendly nor hostile. "I am Staff Sergeant Kim Min-jun. For the next 13 weeks, you will address me as Sir or Staff Sergeant. Is that understood?" Vex Thor tilted his head. This human spoke to him as if he were a common soldier, not a champion of the Kalreth Empire. "I am Commander. I asked you a question, Recruit," Staff Sergeant Kim interrupted. "When I ask you a question, you will respond with, 'Yes, sir,' or 'No, sir.' Nothing else. Try again. Is that understood?" The Kalreth diplomats behind Vexus Thor gasped. No one spoke to a champion this way. Vexus Thor felt anger rise in his chest. But he remembered why he came here. The Galactic Council had questioned Kalreth military effectiveness. Their battles were won through single combat between champions, while humans used strange tactics involving many soldiers working together. Vexus Thor volunteered to attend their training to prove that individual excellence was superior to their primitive team methods. "Yes, sir," Vex Thor said slowly. "Louder, Recruit. I cannot hear you." "Yes, sir. Outstanding. Follow me." Staff Sergeant Kim turned and walked toward a building without checking if Vex Thor followed. The commander hurried to keep pace, his diplomatic escort remaining behind at the shuttle. Inside the building, other humans stood in neat rows. They wore identical clothing and had identical expressions of barely controlled terror on their faces. "Platoon, attention!" Staff Sergeant Kim barked. Every human snapped to a rigid position. "This is Recruit Vex Thor. He is from a warrior species that believes they are superior to humans. For the next 13 weeks, he will learn that individual strength means nothing without discipline, teamwork, and dedication to those beside you. Recruit Vexus Thor, take your place in the 4th Squad." Vex Thor moved to where the staff sergeant pointed. A young human male stood next to him, trying not to stare at the alien warrior. The human was perhaps 5.5 feet tall, thin, with dark hair and nervous eyes. "I am Park Ji-won," the human whispered. "Welcome to Hell." Before Vex Thor could respond, Staff Sergeant Kim was in front of them. "Did I give you permission to speak, Recruit Park?" "No, sir." "Then keep your mouth shut. Both of you. Give me 50 push-ups. Now." Vex Thor dropped to the ground easily. Push-ups were simple exercises. He began performing them with perfect form, his 4 arms giving him significant advantage. Beside him, Park Ji-won struggled, his arms shaking with effort. Vex Thor finished his 50 quickly and stood at attention. "Did I tell you to stop, Recruit Vex Thor?" Staff Sergeant Kim asked. "Sir, I completed 50 push-ups, sir. Your buddy beside you has not finished. When one recruit fails, the entire platoon fails. Get back down and continue until everyone is finished." Vex Thor stared at the staff sergeant. This made no sense. Why should he be punished because this weak human could not perform simple exercises? but he dropped back down and continued. Park Ji-won finally finished his 50 push-ups, gasping for breath. The first day continued. In this pattern, everything Vex Thor did well as an individual was ignored. Every time another recruit struggled, the entire platoon was punished. They ran together, ate together, cleaned together, and stood inspection together. If one recruit's uniform was incorrect, everyone did push-ups. If one recruit answered a question wrong during classes, everyone ran extra miles. By nightfall, Vex Thor lay on a narrow bed in a room filled with sleeping humans. His body was not tired, the physical exercises were easy for him. But his mind churned with confusion. In Calrith culture, weakness was eliminated. The strong rose. The weak fell away. That was natural. That was how warriors were forged. But these humans deliberately slowed the strong to match the weak. They punished achievement if others could not match it. They forced individuals to surrender their excellence for the sake of the group. It was the most alien thing Vex Thor had ever encountered. "Hey," a voice whispered in the darkness. "Park Ji-won. Thank you for waiting during the push-ups. I know you could have done hundreds more." Vex Thor said nothing. He had not waited by choice. He had been ordered to wait. "I will get stronger," Park Ji-won continued. "I will get stronger. I will get stronger. I will get stronger. I promise. I will not slow you down forever." "Why do you tell me this?" Vex Thor asked quietly. "Because we are in the same platoon. We succeed together or fail together. That is what Staff Sergeant Kim teaches us." Vex Thor closed his eyes. He had 13 weeks to endure this strange human philosophy. Then he would return to the Empire and report that while humans had interesting tactics, their obsession with protecting the weak made them ultimately inferior to true warriors. But deep inside, a small doubt began to form. Staff Sergeant Kim had not looked at Vex Thor with fear or awe despite knowing he was an undefeated champion. The Staff Sergeant looked at him the same way he looked at every other recruit, as raw material that needed to be shaped into something else entirely. Something Vex Thor did not yet understand. The next morning began before dawn with screaming and banging on metal trash cans. The recruits had 90 seconds to dress, make their beds perfectly, and stand at attention. Vex Thor managed this easily, but 3 humans in his squad did not. Staff Sergeant Kim inspected each bed with an expression of pure disgust. "Unacceptable," he said quietly. Then he shouted, "Platoon! Outside! Formation run! 5 miles! Now!" They ran in formation as the sun rose over the humid landscape. Vex Thor ran at the front, barely breathing hard. Behind him, he could hear Park Ji-won and others gasping for air. The human body was so fragile compared to Calrith physiology. But they kept running, every single one of them. And when one recruit fell too far behind, the others slowed down until he caught up, earning screaming criticism from Staff Sergeant Kim but continuing anyway. Vex Thor began to wonder if he had underestimated these strange, weak, stubborn humans. The 3rd week of training arrived, and Vex Thor had established himself as the strongest recruit in the platoon. He could run faster, carry more weight, and perform exercises longer than any human. During hand-to-hand combat training, he accidentally sent his sparring partner to the medical facility. The doctors fixed the human's broken ribs and sent him back to training 3 days later. Staff Sergeant Kim watched all of this without any change in expression. He never praised Vex Thor's superior performance. Instead, he constantly reminded the alien warrior that individual excellence was worthless. "Recruit Vex Thor. Congratulations. You can do 300 push-ups without stopping," the staff sergeant said one morning. Meanwhile, Recruit Park can barely do 60. "Do you feel proud of yourself?" "Sir." "Yes, sir." Vex Thor responded automatically. "Wrong answer. You should feel ashamed. You have done nothing to help Recruit Park improve. You watch him struggle and feel superior. That is not the Marine way. Drop and give me 100. Recruit Park. You will count each one out loud. If Recruit Vex's Thor's form breaks even once, he starts over. Vex's Thor dropped to the position. His forearms positioned correctly. Park Ji-won knelt beside him, looking uncomfortable. 1, 2, 3. Park counted. As Vex Thor performed the exercise, Staff Sergeant Kim continued speaking. Strength is only valuable if you use it to make others strong. Speed is only valuable if you use it to help others keep pace. Knowledge is only valuable if you share it. Every advantage you possess is wasted if you keep it to yourself. Vex Thor finished the 100 push-ups. His arms barely felt the strain. Recruit Park, Staff Sergeant Kim said. What is your weakness during push-ups? Sir, my arms are not strong enough, sir. Recruit Vex Thor has 4 arms. You have 2. He will never understand your specific challenge. But Recruit Davis over there also struggles with upper body strength. Tonight during free time, you two will train together. You will teach each other and spot each other. Recruit Vex Thor, you will supervise and provide guidance. Dismissed. That evening, Vex Thor watched as Park Ji-won and another recruit named Davis practiced push-ups together. They encouraged each other, corrected each other's form, and celebrated small improvements. Vex Thor offered technical advice based on leverage and muscle engagement. But he felt like an outsider observing a ritual he did not understand. Why do you help him? Vex Thor asked Davis during a break. He is weak. In my culture, we would remove him from training. Davis wiped sweat from his face. Park isn't weak. He's just starting from a different place than you or me. Give him time. He'll get there. And if he does not, then we carry him until he can walk on his own. That's what Marines do. Vex Thor's confusion deepened. This philosophy contradicted everything he knew about warfare and survival. The strong should advance. The weak should fall away. This was natural selection, the foundation of Calrith military dominance. The following week, the platoon faced a 20-mile forced march, carrying full equipment. Each recruit wore a heavy pack and carried a rifle. The temperature was brutally hot, and humidity made the air thick and hard to breathe. Vex Thor felt no discomfort. His Calrith physiology was designed for harsh environments. He could have completed the march in half the required time, but the platoon moved together, and he was forced to match their slower pace. 5 miles in, Park Ji-won began falling behind. His face was pale, and his breathing came in harsh gasps. Other recruits tried to help him, taking some equipment from his pack and distributing it among themselves. But Park continued to slow down. Staff Sergeant Kim appeared beside Vex Thor. Recruit Vex Thor, your buddy is failing. What are you going to do about it? Vex's Thor looked back at Park Ji-won. The human was clearly reaching his limit. In Calrith training, this was where the weak were separated from the strong. Those who could not continue were removed from the warrior path and given other duties in society. Sir, he should drop out of the march. Sir, Vex Thor said. Staff Sergeant Kim's face turned red. He stepped directly in front of Vex Thor, forcing the alien warrior to stop walking. Let me explain something to you, recruit, the staff sergeant said, his voice low and dangerous. In the Marine Corps, we do not leave people behind. Ever. I don't care if you can carry twice what any human can. I don't care if you think Recruit Park is weak. He is your brother now, and you will treat him as such. If he falls, you pick him up. If he cannot carry his equipment, you carry it for him. If he needs water, you give him yours. That is what Marines do. Do you understand me? Shame, perhaps. Sir, yes, sir. Then get back there and help your buddy. Vex Thor moved back through the formation to where Park Ji-won struggled along. Without speaking, Vex Thor took Park's rifle and added it to his own load. Then he took the heavy pack from Park's shoulders and distributed its contents among his 4 arms. Park looked up at him with exhausted, grateful eyes. "You don't have to. Keep moving," Vex Thor said. "We finish together." Vex Thor carried equipment for 3 different recruits by the end, his superior strength finally finding purpose. When they crossed the finish line, Park Ji-won was still walking on his own feet, though barely. The entire platoon had completed the march. Not a single recruit had been left behind. Staff Sergeant Kim gathered them all together afterward. "Some of you are naturally strong. Some of you are naturally fast. Some of you are naturally smart. None of that matters. What matters is that you learn to use your strengths to cover your brother's weaknesses, and trust them to do the same for you." Recruit Vex Thor demonstrated this today. He could have finished hours ago, but he chose to stay with his platoon. That is the first real Marine decision he has made since arriving here. That night, Vex Thor lay in his bed, thinking about the staff sergeant's words. In Calrith culture, helping someone weaker than yourself was viewed as insulting. It implied they could not succeed on their own merit. But humans seemed to view it differently. They saw strength as a resource to be shared, not hoarded. Park Ji-won's voice came from the darkness. "Thank you for today. You would do the same for me." "Vex," Thor said, though he was not certain this was true. "Yes," Park replied without hesitation. "I would." And somehow, Vex Thor believed him. 6 weeks into training, Vex Thor received a communication from the Calrith Diplomatic Corps. They wanted a progress report. "Thanks for watching." They wanted a progress report. He stood in a small office while the holographic images of 3 Calrith officials materialized before him. "Commander Vex Thor," the lead diplomat said. "The warrior caste is concerned. The videos of your training show you submitting to human authority and performing menial tasks. This does not reflect well on Calrith superiority." Vex Thor straightened. "The training is more complex than I anticipated. These humans have unusual methods." "Unusual or inferior?" another diplomat asked. "You are our greatest champion, yet we see you following orders from creatures half your size and a fraction of your strength. The Empire is embarrassed." "I volunteered for this assignment," Vex Thor said carefully. 13 weeks is the required time. I will complete it and provide a full report. See that you do. The warrior caste is losing patience. Prove that our way is superior, or return home in disgrace." The hologram faded. Vex Thor stood alone in the office, feeling the weight of expectation from his people. He was supposed to demonstrate Calrith superiority. But instead, he found himself questioning everything he knew about warfare and strength. The next day, the platoon faced live fire exercises. They would work in teams to assault a fortified position using actual ammunition. Staff Sergeant Kim explained that this exercise tested not individual skill, but coordinated action. Each fire team has 4 members, he explained. Team leader, rifleman, automatic rifleman, and grenadier. You must move together, provide covering fire for each other, and communicate constantly. If one person makes a mistake, people die. Understood? Sir? Yes, sir, the platoon responded. Vex Thor was placed as the automatic rifleman in a fire team with Park Ji-won as team leader, Davis as rifleman, and another recruit, named Martinez, as grenadier. Vex Thor found it strange that Park was given leadership when he was one of the weakest physically. But Staff Sergeant Kim had been clear about the assignments. The exercise began. Park used hand signals to direct the team forward. They moved in bounds, 2 people advancing, while 2 provided covering fire, then switching. Vex Thor carried the heavy automatic weapon easily, putting suppressing fire on the target positions as Park directed. But then Vex Thor saw an opportunity. An enemy position was exposed for just a moment. His warrior instincts told him to rush forward and eliminate the threat. He left his position and charged ahead, firing as he moved. "Vex Thor, stop!" Park shouted. "Get back in position." But Vex Thor ignored him. He reached the enemy position and neutralized it efficiently. The threat was eliminated. He had succeeded. Except the exercise immediately stopped. Whistles blew, and instructors appeared from everywhere. Staff Sergeant Kim's face was darker than Vex's Thor had ever seen it. "Recruit Vex's Thor front and center, now!" Vex Thor approached, not understanding what he did wrong. He had eliminated the enemy position successfully. "Do you know what you just did?" Staff Sergeant Kim asked, his voice quiet but terrifying. "Sir, I eliminated the enemy position, sir. You left your team exposed. You broke formation. You ignored your team leader's orders. In a real combat situation, you would be dead, and so would everyone depending on you. Recruit Park, explain to Recruit Vex Thor what happened." Park stepped forward, still shaking from adrenaline. "When you left your position, there was no one providing suppressing fire. Davis had to move to cover your sector, which left his sector exposed. Martinez could not advance because he had no covering fire. The entire team's coordination collapsed. If this was real combat, we would all be dead." Vex Thor felt the words like physical blows, but I eliminated the threat. "You eliminated one threat," Staff Sergeant Kim said, "and created 3 more. Individual heroics get people killed. This is not Calrith ritual combat. This is modern warfare. You are not a single warrior. You are one part of a weapon system. And that system only works when every part functions in coordination. Drop and give me 200 push-ups while you think about what teamwork actually means." Vex Thor dropped and began the push-ups. Around him, the rest of the platoon watched in silence. He had failed. Not because he was weak, but because he had been strong in the wrong way. That evening, Park Ji-won found Vex's Thor sitting alone outside the barracks. The human sat down beside him without asking permission. "I know this is hard for you," Park said. "Your entire culture celebrates individual warriors. But let me tell you a story Staff Sergeant Kim told me during week 1 when I was ready to quit." Vex Thor listened. Staff Sergeant Kim was not always a drill instructor. He was deployed in combat 6 years ago. His unit was ambushed, and he was wounded badly. He should have died. But his fire team refused to leave him. They carried him 3 miles under enemy fire to an evacuation point. One of them, a guy named Rodriguez, was killed, covering their retreat. Staff Sergeant Kim survived because Rodriguez used his own body as a shield. Park paused, looking up at the stars. That is what Marines mean. When we talk about brotherhood, Rodriguez was not the strongest or fastest Marine, but he was willing to die so his brothers could live. That is the strength humans value most. Not the strength to kill enemies, but the strength to sacrifice for those beside you. Vexy Thor absorbed this story. In Calrith culture, dying in single combat was honorable, but dying to save someone else? That was considered wasteful. A warrior's death should be glorious, not sacrificial. Yet the way Park spoke about this Rodriguez, there was reverence in his voice. Honor, respect. "I do not understand your species," Vex Thor admitted. Park smiled. "That's okay. You have 7 more weeks to figure it out." Over the following weeks, Vex Thor began paying attention differently. He watched how the fire teams moved together, like single organisms. He saw how the weakest member's position was always protected by the strongest. He noticed that when one recruit excelled at a particular skill, they spent their free time teaching others rather than simply being proud of their ability. And slowly, very slowly, Vex Thor began to understand. Humans did not make warriors. They made something else entirely. They made brothers and sisters who fought not for personal glory, but for the person standing next to them. And that created a kind of strength that no individual warrior, no matter how skilled, could ever match alone. It was the most terrifying military philosophy Vex Thor had ever encountered. The final week of training arrived, and with it, came graduation preparations. Vex Thor stood among his platoon, wearing the same uniform as every other recruit. His scales had dulled slightly from exposure to Earth's sun, and his body carried the same exhaustion that affected his human companions. Staff Sergeant Kim inspected the platoon one final time before the ceremony. He stopped in front of Vex Thor and looked up at the alien warrior. "Recruit Vex Thor, do you know what you have earned?" "Sir." "Completion of basic training." "Sir." "Wrong. You have earned the title of Marine. You have earned the right to call every person in this platoon your brother. You came here believing individual strength was supreme. What have you learned?" Vex Thor thought carefully before answering. "Sir, I have learned that strength means nothing without trust. Speed means nothing without coordination. Individual skill means nothing without teamwork. Marines are not warriors. Marines are something greater than warriors, sir." For the first time in 13 weeks, Staff Sergeant Kim's face showed something other than criticism. The corner of his mouth moved slightly upward. "Outstanding." "Dismissed." "Outstanding." The graduation ceremony was held the next morning. Families of human recruits filled the stands, cheering and crying as their sons and daughters received their eagle, globe, and anchor emblems. Vex Thor had no family present, but the Calreth diplomatic delegation had arrived, along with representatives from a dozen other alien species who served on the Galactic Council. The ceremony proceeded formally. Each recruit's name was called, and they stepped forward to receive their emblem. When Vex Thor's name was announced, he walked across the platform. Staff Sergeant Kim stood waiting, holding the eagle, globe, and anchor in his hands. "Congratulations, Marine," Kim said, and placed the emblem in Vex Thor's hands. Vex Thor stared down at the small piece of metal. It represented 13 weeks of confusion, frustration, failure, and slow understanding. It represented learning that everything he believed about strength was incomplete. After the ceremony, the Calreth diplomatic delegation approached him, along with members of the warrior caste who had traveled specifically to hear his report. The lead diplomat's expression was stern. "Commander Vex Thor, the warrior caste demands an explanation. We watched videos of your training. We saw you submit to human authority, perform tasks beneath your station, and slow yourself to match weaker beings. This was supposed to demonstrate Calreth superiority. Instead, you have embarrassed the Empire." Vex Thor stood straight, still holding his eagle, globe, and anchor. Around him, other members of his platoon stood nearby, watching the confrontation with concern. Park Ji-won moved closer, ready to intervene if necessary. "I have not embarrassed the Empire," Vex Thor said quietly. "I have learned something that may save the Empire." "And what is that?" the warrior caste representative demanded. "I learned why humans win wars." The Calreth delegation fell silent. Other alien observers from various species moved closer to hear. Everyone wanted to understand how humanity, a relatively young species with no natural advantages, had become such a formidable military force in the galaxy. Vex Thor continued. "When I arrived, I believed Marines were human warriors. I was wrong. Warriors fight for personal glory, for honor, for victory that reflects on themselves. Marines fight for something completely different. They fight for the person standing next to them. That is weakness," the warrior caste representative said. "Individuals should be strong enough to fight alone." "That is what I believed," Vex Thor agreed. "But consider this. In Calreth culture, we send our strongest warrior to face an enemy champion. If our champion wins, we claim victory. If he loses, we retreat in shame. Our entire battle strategy depends on individual excellence." "As it should," the diplomat said. "But what happens when the enemy does not fight with champions? What happens when they send 100 soldiers who work in perfect coordination? What happens when their weakest soldier is protected by their strongest, and their strongest uses his power to make everyone around him stronger?" Vex Thor gestured to his platoon. "I have spent 13 weeks learning that human military power does not come from producing superior individual warriors. It comes from creating systems where every person's strength covers another person's weakness. They deliberately link individual fates together so completely that abandoning a comrade becomes psychologically impossible. He held up the eagle, globe, and anchor. This emblem means I am never alone. It means every Marine, everywhere in the galaxy, is my brother or sister. It means if I fall in combat, they will carry me out or die trying. It means if I am surrounded by enemies, help is coming, and it will not stop coming until I am safe, or everyone is dead. The Calrith delegation looked uncomfortable. Other alien species in the crowd began murmuring to each other. That is why humans win wars, Vexthor said. Not because they are stronger individually, they are not. Not because they are more technologically advanced, they are not. They win because they have created a military culture where the greatest dishonor is not losing a battle. The greatest dishonor is abandoning your comrades. And that creates a kind of strength no individual warrior can match. One of the alien observers, a representative from the Threnic species, spoke up. My people fought a war with humanity 15 years ago. We lost, despite having superior weapons and tactics. We could not understand why. Your explanation makes it clear. Another alien, from the Korvax Confederation, nodded agreement. Humans accept casualties that would break any other species' morale, but they do not break because they are not fighting for abstract goals. They fight to bring their brothers home. The Calrith warrior caste representative's scales flushed dark with anger. You suggest we should abandon our traditions? Thousands of years of warrior culture? I suggest we should learn from them, Vexthor said. Not abandon Calrith culture, but expand it. What if we trained our warriors to fight, not only for personal glory, but also for each other? What if we created units where trust and cooperation were as valued as individual skill? Staff Sergeant Kim, who had been standing nearby, stepped forward. Commander Vexthor, or should I say Marine Vexthor, has earned the right to speak on this subject. He came here with all the advantages: strength, speed, endurance. He could have dominated every physical challenge. But he learned that true strength comes from using your advantages to make others stronger. That is the lesson we teach here. The Calreth delegation conferred quietly among themselves. Finally, the lead diplomat spoke. Commander Vexthor, the warrior caste is not pleased, but the Empire recognizes value in your observations. You will return to Calrith space as humanity's official military liaison. You will be permitted to train small groups of volunteers in these human methods. We will evaluate the results. Vexthor straightened. I accept this assignment, but I request permission to retain my Marine Corps status and uniform. The diplomat hesitated, then nodded. Granted, though many will view you with suspicion. Let them, Vexthor said. I know what I have become. After the Calreth delegation departed, Park G1 approached Vexthor with a smile. So, you're really leaving? I must bring this knowledge to my people, but I will return to visit. You better. You're part of this platoon forever now. Once a Marine, always a Marine. Vexthor looked around at the humans he had trained beside for 13 weeks. Davis, Martinez, Park G1, and dozens of others. They had started as strangers from a species he barely understood. Now they were his brothers. Thank you, Vexthor said simply, for teaching me what it means to be strong. Park extended his hand, and Vexthor gripped it firmly with one of his 4 hands. The gesture was clumsy, but sincere. Staff Sergeant Kim approached last. Marine Vexthor, you have my permission to spread Marine Corps values to your species. Make us proud. Marine Vexthor. I will, Staff Sergeant. Semper Fidelis. Always faithful, Kim agreed. To your brothers beside you. 6 months later, Vexthor stood on the training grounds of the Calreth homeworld, watching a group of young warriors complete their first coordinated tactical exercise. They moved in fire teams, providing covering fire for each other, communicating with hand signals, and advancing in disciplined bounds, rather than individual charges. The warrior caste elders watched from an observation platform, their expressions skeptical. This training violated every tradition. Calreth warriors were supposed to prove themselves through individual trials, not group exercises. But the results were undeniable. 3 weeks earlier, a border colony had been attacked by raiders from a hostile species. Traditional Calreth defenders had struggled, with each warrior attempting to face the coordinated enemy forces alone. Vex Thor's experimental unit had deployed as reinforcements, and their human-style tactical coordination had driven off the attackers decisively. Now the elders were forced to pay attention. Vex Thor wore both his Calreth warrior markings and his Marine Corps uniform, a combination that made many traditional warriors uncomfortable. He stood beside a young Calreth named Torshan, explaining the exercise. "Your team moved well through the first objective," Vex Thor said. "But watch your left flank. When your automatic rifleman advances, someone must cover his position. You left a gap, but I saw an opportunity to strike the enemy position," Torshan protested. "My warrior instinct said to attack." "Your warrior instinct is valuable," Vex Thor acknowledged. "But it must be balanced with responsibility to your team. Yes, you might have eliminated that enemy position, but if you had been wounded or killed, your entire team's cohesion would collapse. Your life is not only your own anymore. It belongs to your brothers, who depend on you." Torshan looked troubled. "This is difficult to accept. Our entire culture teaches that a warrior's glory is his own. Glory is meaningless if your brothers die earning it," Vex Thor said. "Would you rather be remembered as the warrior who killed the most enemies, or the warrior who ensured all his brothers returned home alive?" Before Torshan could answer, a shuttle descended from orbit. Vex Thor recognized the human military transport immediately. He excused himself and walked to the landing pad, his heart's beating faster with anticipation. Staff Sergeant Kim stepped off the shuttle, along with 3 other Marines. The human looked around at the alien landscape with interest, but no fear. "Staff Sergeant Kim," Vex Thor said, his voice carrying genuine warmth. "Welcome to the Calreth homeworld." "Welcome, Marine Vex Thor," Kim responded, returning a salute. "I came to observe your training program. Command is interested in how you are adapting Marine Corps doctrine to Calreth culture. Come, I will show you." They walked to the observation platform where the warrior caste elders waited. The elders regarded the human visitors with barely concealed disdain, but they maintained diplomatic courtesy. "This is Staff Sergeant Kim Min-jun," Vex Thor introduced. "He was my drill instructor during basic training. He has come to evaluate our progress." One of the elders spoke. "Human, you are smaller than our youngest warriors. Yet Commander Vex Thor claims you taught him valuable lessons. Explain how this is possible." Kim's expression did not change. "Size and strength have never been the most important factors in warfare. If they were, humans would not have survived our own planet's predators. What matters is discipline, coordination, and the willingness to sacrifice for those beside you. Your Commander Vex Thor learned this quickly, once he stopped thinking of himself as an individual warrior and started thinking of himself as part of a team. And you believe Calreth warriors should abandon our individual traditions?" the elder challenged. "No," Kim said simply. "Individual skill is valuable, but it should be used to strengthen the group, not glorify the individual. The strongest warrior should use his strength to protect the weakest. The fastest should ensure no one falls behind. The smartest should teach others. That is how you build units that cannot be defeated." Below them, Vex Thor's trainee unit completed the exercise. They had successfully assaulted the objective position with 0 casualties, each member covering the others efficiently. The elders watched in silence. "Traditional methods have served the Calreth Empire for thousands of years," another elder said. "Why should we change now?" Vex's Thor stepped forward. "Because the galaxy has changed, honored elders. Our enemies no longer fight with ritual combat. They use coordinated tactics, combined arms, and numerical superiority. Individual warrior skill is not enough anymore. We must adapt or face irrelevance. The first elder's scales flushed with anger. You speak of abandoning our heritage. I speak of expanding it. Vex Thor corrected. I am still a Calrith warrior, but I am also a Marine. These identities do not contradict each other. They strengthen each other. Our warrior tradition gives us courage and skill. Human methods give us coordination and mutual support. Together, they create something superior to either alone. 10 for men, to our Laman. 2 men, 10 for men, 10 for men. Staff Sergeant Kim observed the exchange quietly, then spoke. If I may offer perspective, Marines come from many backgrounds. Some are strong. Some are smart. Some are brave. Some are scared. We do not require them to abandon their identities. We teach them to channel their individual strengths toward collective goals. Your commander Vexus Thor has done exactly this. He remains a proud Calrith warrior. But now he understands that true strength comes from unity. The elders discussed among themselves in their own language. Finally, the senior elder addressed Vex Thor directly. Your experimental unit will be expanded. You may train 5 more groups using these methods. We will evaluate their effectiveness in actual combat situations. If they prove superior to traditional warriors, we will consider wider adoption. But understand this, Commander. You carry the honor of the Calrith Empire. Failure will not be forgiven. Understood, honored elder, Vex Thor said, bowing formally. After the elders departed, Staff Sergeant Kim walked with Vex Thor through the training grounds. The young Calreth warriors stopped to stare at the human Marines, whispering among themselves. You have done well, Kim said. This is not easy work, changing a culture's entire military philosophy. I learned from the best teacher, Vex Thor replied. You taught me that strength without purpose is wasted. Now I teach that to my people. They reached an area where Torshan's team was cleaning their weapons and discussing the day's exercise. When they saw Vexus Thor and the human Marines approaching, they stood at attention. At ease, Vex Thor said. This is Staff Sergeant Kim, my former drill instructor. He wants to speak with you. Kim looked at the young Calrith warriors. I understand this training is difficult for you. Your culture values individual achievement, and now you are being asked to subordinate personal glory to team success. Some of you probably resent this. Several of the warriors shifted uncomfortably, confirming Kim's observation. Let me tell you why this matters. Kim continued. 2 years ago, I led a squad on a mission that went wrong. We were outnumbered, surrounded, and had no support coming. We should have died. But we did not. Because every Marine in that squad trusted each other completely. When I was wounded, my corporal took command without hesitation. When we ran low on ammunition, we redistributed what we had to those with the clearest shots. When one Marine's weapon jammed, another provided covering fire, without being asked. We survived because we functioned as a single organism, not as individuals. He paused, looking at each warrior in turn. That is what Commander Vex Thor is teaching you. Not to be weak, not to surrender your pride, but to understand that your strength is multiplied when you use it to protect your brothers, and their strength protects you in return. That creates a force that cannot be broken, no matter the odds. Torshan spoke hesitantly. Staff Sergeant, what is the hardest part of being a Marine? Kim considered the question carefully. The hardest part is knowing that your life is not entirely your own anymore. When you become a Marine, you make an unspoken promise to every other Marine. You promise that you will never abandon them, no matter the cost, and you trust that they will never abandon you. That promise is heavier than any weapon you will carry, but it is also what makes Marines feared across the galaxy. The young warriors absorbed this in silence. Then Torshan straightened. I understand now. Thank you, Staff Sergeant. As the sun set over the Calreth homeworld, Vex's Thor and Staff Sergeant Kim stood overlooking the training grounds. Tomorrow, Kim would return to Earth, and Vex Thor would continue his work transforming Calreth military culture one small unit at a time. I have a question, Vex Thor said. When I first arrived at Paris Island, you treated me exactly like every other recruit. You did not acknowledge my accomplishments or my rank. Why? 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 Kim smiled slightly. Because none of that mattered. I did not care about what you had been. I only cared about what you could become. You could have remained a great Calreth warrior. Instead, you chose to become a Marine. That required leaving your ego behind and learning humility. If I had treated you as special, you never would have learned the most important lesson. And what lesson is that? That you are not special. You are one Marine among thousands, and that is exactly what makes you valuable. Not your individual greatness, but your willingness to be part of something greater than yourself. Vex Thor looked at his hands, 4 strong arms that could crush stone and defeat any opponent in single combat. For his entire life, he believed these hands represented his worth. Now he understood they only had value because of what they could do for others. Thank you, Staff Sergeant, Vex Thor said quietly, for showing me what true strength means. Kim placed a hand on Vex's Thor's arm. You figured it out yourself, Marine. I just gave you the opportunity. Now you pass that opportunity to your people. Make us proud. Make us. Semper Fidelis, Staff Sergeant. Always faithful, Marine. The human shuttle lifted off shortly after, carrying Staff Sergeant Kim back to Earth. Vex Thor watched it disappear into the evening sky, then turned back to the training grounds where young Calreth warriors practiced moving as teams rather than individuals. The work ahead would be difficult. Many would resist. The warrior caste would challenge every innovation, but Vex Thor had learned something during his 13 weeks on Earth that no Calreth had understood before. Warriors fight alone and earn personal glory. Marines fight together and earn something far more valuable. They earn brothers and sisters who will never abandon them, no matter how dark the battle becomes. And that created a strength no individual warrior, no matter how mighty, could ever hope to match. Vex Thor adjusted his Marine Corps uniform, the eagle, globe, and anchor gleaming on his chest beside his Calreth warrior markings. He was both identities now, and he would use both to forge something new. A generation of Calreth warriors who understood that true strength came not from standing alone, but from refusing to let your brothers fall. The galaxy would learn to fear this new combination. Not because Calreth warriors had become more deadly individually, but because they had learned humanity's most dangerous secret. Marines never fight alone. And they never, ever, leave anyone behind. 2. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.